That's right, yeah, I got an agenda. And it's your...
Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again, barefaced lies. Too often, I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. I'll say barefaced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Hey son, you got a party, got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
Barefaced lies. Barefaced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Death and childhood poverty. Won't somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Barefaced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you think we ever wanna defend, yeah? Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shit cold, overgrown, postal phone, barefaced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you wonder where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you
we now have a number, and that number is 522. 522 confirmed cases of sexual abuse of children in Oldham in 2022. Experts will confirm that the confirmed cases are always significantly lower than what the real figures are. My own estimates, conservative estimates in my opinion, is that it is 1,500 children in 2022. 1,500 children. To help you conceptualize what that is every child in a secondary school. From year 7 to year 11, including the sixth form if they have one, that is every child in a secondary school. And remember, we were told barefaced lies.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011 he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.
A very, very good evening. Sunday, the 17th of September 2023. My name is Roger Mia. This is a Recusant 9 transmission Sunday night. This one's free to air. A lot going on. What we've done, and I'll explain it so it makes sense to you, is the comments are only for the paid members, 99 pence a month it costs you. So if you want to complain about paying 99 pence a month, which I get 66 pence, well done. I'm afraid there's very little I can do. And the reason why, so we start with some clarity, the reason why is, if you all recall, Dr. Zahid Chauhan had gone to a law firm, a JMW Solicitors. And JMW Solicitors had sent me an estimated bill of £250,000 because Dr. Chauhan had been advised to sue me for defamation. This has been going on now for, I think, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months maybe. And his legal team, the legal team JMW pulled together, included Johnny Depp's, the barristers involved in Johnny Depp's trial. So while some of you whinge that I don't do enough, what's the phrase, David Gidman? What has Raja Mir ever done is the phrase, and I'll get to that in a minute, Mr. John Hughes. Don't you worry about that, because I know you and your mates are watching. Well, the attempt to sue me for defamation has failed, and that case is over. I'll be issuing a statement tomorrow, the day after. And one of the stretches, and these are stretches, one of the stretches that Dr. Chauhan had been badly advised, in my opinion, was that I had questioned, quite rightly, as we've now agreed, that declaration should be declared under members' declaration of interest. And he'd been advised by someone in the council that it didn't need to be. I never accused anyone of corruption. I simply said, why had the members' declaration of interest not been filled in? And this is increasingly a consistent theme with this council. So the more I look at this, the more I start to think it's actually a fault with the council officers at the very least. But one of the stretches was, one or two of you had said something in the comments. People I don't even know had said something in the comments, and they'd used the comments to say I'd inferred defamation. Not what I'd said, but what some people had said in the comments. And of course, some of the people who'd said stuff in the comments are complete strangers to me. So this is why, moving forward, the comments are simply set up for paying members only, 99 pence a month, which means I've got your email at some point, and then I can... Because it's easy, isn't it? It's easy having me front it and having me risk everything. And it's also, I think, with everything that's gone on, from the firebombing of Arud Shah's car, for instance, anyone could come along and say something, couldn't they, to set me up. Misinterpret what I've said, set me up on purpose, and I'd be in trouble. So this way it gives me some security, and I apologise if some of you who do support me via the Ghost platform, if I've asked you to pay an extra 99 pence a month. What's that? 30 pence? It's not even that, is it? 25 pence a week. Because it gives me some level of insurance. So I hope that's okay. Ignore the Willabooby idiot who was going on about, what, I don't know, one of you sent it me. Something about this has happened at some high court or whatever. He's out of the picture. Dr. Chauhan, he's got some family issues, but he also wants to focus on his mayoral campaign. His mayoral year. Let him go and do that. And if any of you have got issues with him, take it up with him. And if any of you, particularly councillors, have got issues with the declarations of interest and why councillors, elected members, are getting bad advice, well, then I suggest you need to raise it. And I've got some more on that coming up next week, I think, in terms of bad advice and dodgy dealings with the members' declaration of interest involving Oldham Council officers. And I wouldn't, Pauline, I agree with you. It's exactly that. I wouldn't put it past some of the lowlifes who disguise themselves on here. But so we're clear. The paperwork I got from JMW, who, by the way, are still being pursued through the Solicitor's regulatory authority, the SRA, who have confirmed they're investigating them for what's known as a SLAPP, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. No, they came in for, give us some money and we'll deal with him. Well, I'm still here. I believe this is still a liberal Western democracy, and we have the right to ask questions, not just of our elected representatives, but of our civil servants, our public officers. So that is where we're up to. I'll issue a statement. If any of you have an issue, I don't even think it's the issue with Dr. Chauhan. If any of you have an issue, I think you suggest you pick it up with the Borough Solicitor, Paul Entwistle. Remember how Arud Shah backdated her resignation of Gelatos? It all goes back. I shared it last week, I think, as well. How, what's he called? Cami G had redacted all of his business interests, which were HMOs. You can't do that. Someone in the council did that or agreed to doing that. You can't redact your business interests. on your members' declaration of interest. But we've known from the outset that this council is corrupt and it needs taking over. Because I have that viewpoint, the council is now taking legal action against me. An injunction, apparently. We'll get to that later. It will be entertaining. Thank you to the latecomers who've joined me. Thank you to the latecomers who've joined me. I'm just looking at the stream to the right of me. I was, indeed, Louis, declaration of interest in my family experience regarding the planning committee. Declarations absent in controversial planning applications. I think that involved the builder of whom was a member of the planning. Was that Builder Malik? Was that Abdul Malik? I bet it was Abdul Malik. Yeah. I bet it was Abdul Malik. Let's start with the Charlotte Green story. And please share. There's 44 of you who've liked it so far, even less of you who've shared it. Please share. There's 113 of you watching. So I'd like some more likes, please, and like some more shares, because this has, I'm putting this out completely free. Because I think it's of value. Unless someone else has done the analysis for you. Okay. And you'll have to excuse me if I'm coughing. I'm still not well. Okay. When Charlotte Green runs with a headline, when Charlotte Green runs with this headline in the Manchester Evening News, fears raised more than 500 children in Greater Manchester town were being sexually abused last year. You need to understand what's going on. And I'll share my own thoughts on what's going on. As always, whether you believe me or not is entirely up to you. The Manchester Evening News is strongly allied with the Labour Party. It's the South Manchester metropolitan elite. I call them the fake liberals. And Andy Burnham. This is the establishment rag. It's been complicit in the cover-up of the grooming and gang rape of our town's children, and has played front and centre alongside publications such as The Mill in attacking me and others who've forced the council, forced Burnham, and now forced the launching of Operation Sherwood, which has over 100 police officers. Do you think Greater Manchester Police have just put over 100 police officers onto an investigation for nothing? They've done that because we forced them. So this is an establishment publication. And I use the term loosely, establishment. Those who control Greater Manchester. Charlotte Green, as we all know, is the local democracy reporter paid for by the BBC, who I ridiculed to such an extent that she's blocked me on Twitter. And I ridiculed her because she sent me an abusive email with a list of questions. And instead of responding to her, responding here, and I slapped her about. And of course, I mean that figuratively, literally. Yeah. I humiliated her in my responses because she made a series of not just unfounded, but malicious allegations. And she was going to write a story. Well, that story never came. Charlotte Green is also involved in what led to Warren Bates receiving his ASBY, and she could have ended it by issuing a public statement saying at no point did he threaten her, at no point did he harass her, because that's why he was banned for a year from council meetings, because someone had reported to someone that they'd seen someone watching at Warren harass Charlotte Green. Charlotte Green knew it was false, but she did not issue a public statement at any one point. So instead, allowed the criminalisation of an 85-year-old man. So that's who Charlotte Green is. Thank you, mate. That's what I meant when I say establishment. The allegiance to the Labour Party. And no, there was nothing strange. What this is they are trying to control the narrative. It's better they report this in the way that they report this to try and control what comes out, rather than me or someone else do it. So that's what Charlotte Green has done and the Manchester Evening has done. They've not suddenly turned a new leaf or have found a conscience. They are attempting to control the narrative now that they can't cover it up anymore. Do you understand? So that's what Charlotte Green and the Manchester Evening News are doing. And they're still trying to cover it up because just look at the headline. Fears raised more than 500 children in Greater Manchester town were being sexually abused last year. Why is the word Oldham not in that headline? Why is the word Oldham not in that headline? And then it also says, campaigners for survivors say low prosecution rates mean sexual offences have virtually become decriminalised. No. Do you see how they've already shifted it? They've already shifted it in the, is it a byline? By say low prosecution rates. As though the police were trying to prosecute, or the CPS were trying to prosecute, or the system did what it was meant to have done. We know in Oldham that it had nothing to do with low prosecution rates. It was to do with them knowing about it and covering it up. Not even arresting people. This isn't about sexual offences being virtually decriminalised because of low prosecution rates. What we know happened in Oldham goes one step earlier in that, where they didn't even consider what was being done to these children as criminal offences. And where they did, they decided that these criminal offences was a price worth paying for community relations. And then if you nudge it along one further, they decided it was a price worth paying to keep themselves in power. But they want you to forget all of that and somehow, exactly Gary, dilute it. Shift the focus, and just by a little bit, they shift it significantly. And that's just off the headline. So let's carry on with an analysis. Just make this bigger. Referrals raising concerns over children being sexually abused in Oldham have risen by 586%. Police officers and social workers raised fears that more than 500 children from Oldham were being sexually abused last year, the highest in nearly a decade. Apparently, it's their investigation has found this, and they've submitted a Freedom of Information request. Leaders say, who are the leaders? Is it Gerard Jones? Is it Arood Shah? I don't know. Leaders say the substantial increase reflects a more sophisticated understanding of abuse and child sex exploitation. So they reckon in the last year, because this is 2022, so between 2021 and 2022, they have developed a more sophisticated understanding of abuse and child sexual exploitation. Now, what's happened is we have made this into an issue in the public domain. We had forced this to be into the limelight. We've dragged it from the dark places that they've hidden it. And we have got it to a place where these children, these young people, are no longer fearful of saying, I have been raped, I have been sexually abused. If we are being accused of being racist, of complaining, of raising awareness, and far-right activists, what do you think the victims were? What's the cliche? That the tweet that the Labour MP liked by mistake, as she claimed? Those girls should shut their mouths for the sake of diversity? No. Those children are learning that they are not to blame. And once they do speak out, because of what we have done, how we have sacrificed ourselves, the agencies are being forced to respond and react, irrespective of who the perpetrators are. And that step change in this town is a direct consequence of what we have done and what we have put ourselves through, rather than what leaders have done. A more sophisticated understanding of abuse. What on earth? It is the most simple understanding. Sexual abuse is the most simple understanding. You do not need to have a sophisticated understanding of it. It's a simple understanding. Thank you, Debbie. It was MP Nasha, and of course she then won in court. I think she took someone to court for defamation, and it was proven that she liked the tweet by mistake. My own thoughts are the person who made that tweet, posted that tweet in the first place, should have been done for malicious communication. So now they get involved in what they have been trying to do, deflect again. This includes concerns over sexual abuse within the home and within families, as well as exploitation happening online, peer-on-peer abuse, and grooming by older individuals are connected to criminal exploitation and county lines. And they go on to Sam. I'm not interested in going over old ground with Sam. No offence to her. We've heard the story. Oldham's Director of Children's Services, Gerard Jones, so I presume that's the leader, because he's the only named sort of senior council officer in this entire story, told the MEN Local Democracy Service he does not believe there is evidence demonstrating mass grooming gangs are operating in Oldham. Hold on. So his first statement is to say he does not believe there is evidence demonstrating mass grooming gangs are operating in Oldham. Well, of the 522 children, Gerard Jones, Arood Shah, forget Gerard Jones, the leader of Oldham, Arood Shah, should be issuing immediately, should have already issued by now, a breakdown of the different types of sexual abuse that 522 children have endured in this town in just 1 year. Officially, and the unofficial will be much, much higher. And I'll tell you why. He's outrageous. This man's behaviour has been consistently outrageous. So the 522, how can you say you do not believe the evidence demonstrates mass grooming gangs? And no one asked you about mass grooming gangs, by the way. And what do you mean by mass grooming gangs? What does the word mass mean? He reckons numbers reflect a rising awareness of different forms of abuse and more reporting by residents and professionals. Well, again, why is there more reporting by residents and professionals? Why? Mr. Jones admitted the numbers of people charged with sexual abuse and rape nationally is concerningly low. He shifted it again. You're talking about people being charged with rape and sexual abuse being nationally concerningly low includes adults. I'm really sorry. My focus is on children and this report is on the 522 children. So why is it concerningly low? And then she needs to shift it. Charlotte Green, the government said it has launched its new child sexual exploitation police task force in April with £4.5 million of funding over 3 years to provide vital support to victims. My understanding of the police task force was to go into the areas where the grooming gangs had operated because that's where the Home Secretary announced it. Ministers have invested in a range of work to strengthen law enforcement capacity and capabilities to bring perpetrators to justice, it added. Just nonsense. It's just a paragraph in nonsense. Remember, this is your local democracy reporter. The sentence to take out of her is that first one. Oldham's Director of Children's Services, Gerard Jones, does not believe there is evidence demonstrating mass grooming gangs are operating in Oldham, but he will not share the evidence. He will not share the breakdown of the numbers. Why? If I was your MP, I would have issued a statement by now sharing my deep concern and demanding a breakdown of the numbers. Demanding a breakdown of the numbers. Because only through the statistical analysis can we actually move forward. But they won't provide it. Remember, this is the first time they've given us a number. This is the first time they've given us a number. The MEN asked Oldham Council how many referrals specifically raising concerns of sexual abuse against children in the borough have been recorded by social services and flagged to social workers by the police in the last 20 years. The local authority said it could only provide data back to 2014 when current recording systems began. It confirmed the total referrals made related to sexual abuse against young people under the age of 16 stood at 76 for the year 2014. This has since soared to 522 in 2022. Again, let me share with you how you're being played. Why would the Manchester Evening News Charlotte Green Local Democracy Reporting Service ask Oldham Council how many referrals specifically raising concerns of sexual abuse against children in the borough have been recorded by social services and flagged to social workers by the police in the last 20 years? Why would they ask that question and not ask the question, how many children in Oldham are victims of the grooming gangs? Why would the local democracy service and the Manchester Evening News not ask the question that needs to be asked? How many children did Andy Burnham's report identify? In its entirety, not the case studies that it decided to focus on. Why won't Charlotte Green ask the question that needs to be asked? I think so, Sally Ann. I think so. Oh, it's definitely not the true figure. Forget that, forget that. It's definitely not the true figure. With figures fluctuating across the 8 years, blah, 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 and they do this nice little graph, you can see. The majority of referrals in 2022 came through social services professionals working in Oldham, who made 251 referrals, compared to 118 concerns lodged by Greater Manchester Police. Police referrals have been generally lower than those raised by Oldham Council and social work partners in the borough, with annual referrals not exceeding 78 until 2021. So Greater Manchester Police, something happened in Greater Manchester Police between 2021 and 2022. I wonder what that could have been. Any guesses? What could it have been? Just 21 concerns were officially recorded by the force in 2014. 7 years later, they rose to 164 and further increased to 189 last year. You know what that's an admission of? That is an admission of systematic under-reporting, under-recording of the rape, the sexual abuse of children. I don't consider 2014 to be historical, do you? It's less than 10 years ago. I'm sorry, I'm not having that as historical as a long ago when the world was different. And what they are demonstrating here again, as this graph shows, in 2014 how low it was and what it is now. As this graph shows, is that children were being failed? Or do we believe that suddenly, after we started raising the issues and raising the concerns, that the child abusers moved in? No. The child abusers got away with it in 2014, in 2016, and far back and far back and far back. And that's another reason why we should have a public inquiry. How many cases under Shabir Ahmed were covered up? So she brings it back to Gerard Jones again. Gerard Jones, who joined Oldham Council as head of Children's Services at the end of 2019. Why is he saying that? Because Charlotte Green here is trying to help Gerard Jones distance himself from the failings of the past. Otherwise, why say Gerard Jones joined Oldham Council as head of Children's Services at the end of 2019? Well, if Gerard Jones wants to distance himself from the past, what Gerard Jones cannot distance himself from is what he did, what is in black and white in the assurance review, where he lied to, misled Andy Burnham's review team and claimed one of the victims was too suicidal, too mentally unstable to give evidence. And remember, this is an inquiry that took evidence from 0 individuals until after Maggie Oliver's intervention, where it just took testimony from 1. Guys, I can see what's going on there. Maybe Denise has got 2 accounts, maybe someone else has, but it's completely irrelevant for now, isn't it? Focus on what's important. Again, he goes back to this. We're not aware of any mass grooming. We're not aware is not the same as there is no mass grooming. The words are intentional, subtle, but to give you and take you to a certain place. We're not aware of any mass grooming. Well, even when there was mass grooming, and what I mean by was mass grooming is Shabir Ahmed and his gang, you were covering it up as a council and the police. We're aware of the risks that happen to young people in our community through online exploitation and through different forms of exploitation and the relationship between them. He wants to shift the narrative to online exploitation and different forms of exploitation and the relationship between them. What does that sentence even mean? There are individuals, some of which we will know, some of which we'll work together with our colleagues to identify. Who are the individuals we're talking about? Are we talking about the perpetrators? We're constantly vigilant about the risk to young people. No, you're not. If you were constantly vigilant about the risk to young people, the horror stories would not have emerged. But if you said to me, he's focused on this, Charlotte Green is focused on this. But if he said to me, do I honestly think there is mass grooming in Oldham? Has anyone asked him if there is mass grooming in Oldham? I don't think there is. Well, Charlotte Green, if you've submitted a Freedom of Information request and you've extracted that 522 young people were sexually abused in just 1 year in Oldham, the obvious question yet again is how many of those 522 were victims of the grooming? How many of them? And what was the demographics? How many of them were white? How many of the perpetrators were Pakistani? How many of the perpetrators were, something else? How many of the victims were Asian? Where's the demographics? How can you have a more sophisticated understanding of this issue if you don't have the demographics, the data? They are manipulating you, they are misleading to you, and I would say they are lying to you. And this is all intentional. But what we do see is there are dangerous individuals and there are risks that apply to young people. Well, who are the dangerous individuals? What are the risks to young people? He doesn't know what he's talking about. I think that's clear. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And there you go. Not only in Oldham, which is the narrative they've consistently used to hide. It happens everywhere else. Well, I couldn't care less because I can't do anything about everywhere else. What I and we can do about is our own town. Gerard Jones, you're not hired to care or work anywhere else. You're hired for Oldham. The best part of £150,000. Not only in Oldham, because a lot of our young people are travelling into other Greater Manchester boroughs. Well then, how many of these children were sexually abused outside Oldham? And how many of these children were sexually abused inside Oldham? So my position is not complacent. No, your position, agreed, Pauline. Your position is incompetence. Or your position is complicit. I've yet to hear an explanation from him as to why he tried to prevent a survivor from giving testimony. The only time I've seen him publicly is sat at that front table sneering at victims, survivors and outraged members of the public. Mr. Jones added that the most serious forms of abuse are fortunately quite rare. There are around 50 children currently being seen as part of Oldham's multi-agency safeguarding hub, which deals with the most severe cases. So 50 children are being seen with by MASH. How can you say that is fortunately quite rare? Why use the word fortunately? Why use the word fortunately? That's an outrageous word to use. One is one too many. And what does quite rare mean? What's the benchmark? And what are the most serious forms of abuse? So again, let's break it down. Are the most serious forms of abuse victims of grooming gangs? Is that what you mean by the 50? And why around 50? Why around? Do you not know? Are you making the figures up? How can you say around 50? These are our children. And as you yourself say, these are the most serious, who are suffering the most serious forms of abuse. What is the exact number, Gerard Jones? Looking forward, he expects the numbers of referrals to move again, likely upwards, as they become better at identifying abuse and new risks emerge. Gobbledygook nonsense, but what he's saying is, and what this here in that line is what this article is really about, is trying to manage it. The numbers are going to go up. So at what point do we say it's an epidemic? At what point do we say it's an epidemic? Because you've got 522. We agree they're underreported. Experts will confirm the real figures are 2 times, 3 times. It's the size of a secondary school. Go and pick a secondary school in Oldham, count every child that goes in, and that's the equivalent. During the pandemic, Mr. Jones said they saw the extent of online exploitation surge. Okay, so give us some statistics. What was it before? What did it become? How did it surge? The council says the most common type of child sexual exploitation in Oldham now begins online rather than in the community. Okay, what do you mean by common? Is that to say, of the 522 that you know about, 250, 260 are online? Is it one more to make it more common? It's an admittance. It's been an evolving picture. And that's why numbers look so different. I supposes. Because we're counting different things than we used to, because we're bringing new groups of people into our system that weren't there before. Okay, forget all of that. You've still agreed that there's 522. It might not, I don't care that you think it's an evolving picture, but the picture you've got now is 522, and you've got the demographic data of that 522. Why won't you publish it? And I'll tell you why I think they won't publish it, because it'll tell us what we all fear the most. Children going missing repeatedly from home or school are often symptomatic of hidden abuses occurring. Children repeatedly going missing from home or from school was a repeated characteristic of how the grooming gangs operated. Mr. Jones said, and creating trusted relationships with children through the complex safeguarding hub is crucial to detecting risk and helping them stay safe. Well, how do you create trusted relationships? I'd argue that we safeguard before that, Gerard Jones, and we safeguard before that because I, as a parent, want to know where the risks are coming from so I can protect my daughter. If the risks are in the community, I want to know what community, where and how. If the risks are online, I want to know how, so I can better safeguard my child. And I'm sure all of you here are with me on that. So why won't they give us the data? Why won't they give us the evidence? It's no different now than it was under Jim McMahon. Remember the report again, and I go back to the report because there's enough in there to warrant a public inquiry. The report in there confirms that schools were meant to have been told, head teachers were meant to have been told of the risk of grooming gangs from shisha bars, and they weren't. Well, who was responsible for not telling them? Because that person should be prosecuted. And it's no different here. Because if the parents weren't told, I looked at it and I look at it and think, oh yeah, it's happening in Rochdale, but we're okay in Oldham. And that's what many of us were misled and manipulated into believing. And that's another thing, isn't it? Well, okay. If your data is skewed, and the data across all the police forces are skewed, well, if in 2014 the data in Oldham was 70 or 50, if that was what it was the same in Telford, if that's what it was the same in Rotherham, then we have an understanding, don't we? Thank you, Gary, of what the real data is. The MASH is also able to link up with the police when a child is believed to be associating with a known offender, a known sex offender, a known child sex offender. Is that what you mean? A known groomer? I don't know. Or other young people who are being subject to exploitation. So other young people who then take children into risk-taking places. Well, I'm sorry. If you've got known child sex offenders, what do you want me to say? I go back to Rod Blythe. And how the council hid it. The council hid, with the Greater Manchester Police complicit in hiding, and the MEN complicit in hiding, a senior Oldham councillor for over 20 years was a convicted child sex offender. Wow. Professional curiosity, inverted commas, is key in understanding the picture of how abuse is being perpetrated. It's about putting the full picture together in relation to a young person to fully understand and quantify the risks to them. No, it's not. That's not how risk analysis takes place. in any setting I've worked in, that's not how risk analysis takes place. We already have a framework. We already know what the risk indicators are. So why won't you share them? Again, this word. However, this level of sophistication is a new phenomenon within social work. Well, share your insight, Gerard Jones. He's talking nonsense. Previously, systems lacked the language and mechanisms and the structures to interpret more complex forms of abuse. If you think about where we are now in terms of level of sophistication, it, as in it being child sexual exploitation, wasn't even a category under the original safeguarding arrangements, which were really about physical abuse. So is that an admittance? Is that an admittance that Oldham Council, until 2021, 2022, because that's the data we're going off, is that an admittance from Oldham Council that until 2022 they weren't even recording the data, the specific data of grooming gangs? Is that what I'm meant to take from that? I'm not a stupid man. I'm trying to understand, so help me understand. One of the issues for us to explain why what seems obvious now wasn't obvious then. Is he really saying it wasn't obvious then that these children were being gang raped? When is then? What date is then, Gerard Jones, Director of Children's Services? If now is when this article is written, or in 2022 when this data's from, if that's now, when was then? And the other sophistication that has arrived is the connection up of criminal exploitation with sexual exploitation, connecting children going missing. Hold on. What he's just admitted to is what we've called trafficked. Trafficking of young people, selling of young people, goes back to Shabir Ahmed. The grooming gang model was we groomed these children with boyfriends or whatever, you know. The boyfriend model, the sympathy model, the attention model, keeping, you know, treating them as older, more sophisticated. Phase one, they took their pleasure, and I use that term, you know, you understand why I use it the way I do. Then they introduced them to the gangs, and then they were trafficked wider. That's not new. That's not sophistication. Some of these children have complex presentations where they're not just victims of one thing, and sometimes maybe perpetrators of exploitation and abuse on other young people and be victims themselves. Well, how many of the young people that you've just described fit into the category of the 522 that I've made reference to? How many of those young people that you're trying to say are complex and they're, you know, they're part of the grooming networks is what he's basically saying. So he's talking about grooming, isn't he? He says grooming isn't rife or, you know, and all of that, but he goes back to talking about grooming. He likes the word sophistication, Pauline, because I think he doesn't, you know. Yeah. Which is one of the things that means that building a relationship of trust with them is problematic. But building a relationship of trust with young people is problematic, Not because of the networks they belong to, you muppet. It's because, as has been demonstrated time after time after time, is how you, as in the authorities, have consistently failed these young people. What do you think a 14-year-old girl who's being gang raped is going to say if she knew any of what we know? The first thing I'd worry about is that, if I was her, is I'd be labelled a racist. Or I was asking for it. I was making a lifestyle choice. At what point in any of this has any of the council or any of those in positions of power or the institutions themselves actually acknowledged that this was wrong, they should never have done this, and this is what they now do differently? Where is that education? Why aren't they going into every school in this town and saying, this is what we used to do, we got it wrong, this is how many children we failed, and this is now what we are doing. And because of this is what we are doing, every time we've been aware of this and we've intervened, this is why we've been able to protect children. Where is that presentation, Gerard Jones? I would say it doesn't exist because you don't do it. We've just got a lot better. He's claiming credit. We've just got a lot better. And I think in terms of a profession and a partnership in understanding the patterns of behaviour compared to where we would have been. Any moment now, Oldham Council is going to be awarded a medal or some form of recognition for best practice. Any moment now it's coming. Honestly, that's what I think. Any moment now, they're going to award themselves a medal. Then she jumps to Sam, waste of time. Not what Sam's saying, but it has no bearing on this. She wants grooming to be taught from years 4 or 5, but forget it. Waste of time. There's no point having that conversation. I worked with terrorists for a time. Yeah, those who are convicted of terrorism. And I mean this with the greatest of respect to everyone. But what I and the professionals who worked in that arena all agreed, apart, compared to some of the commentators and the politicians, was, and it's a cliche, I suppose, you wouldn't let someone mad run an asylum. Just because they're experienced it or been victims of it doesn't mean that they become policy experts on it. Is I think what I'm trying to say. Mr. Jones said awareness is better than it was previously. How do you quantify that, Mr. Jones? How have you quantified that statement? Awareness is better than it was previously. Awareness amongst which groups is better than it was previously? The professionals, the young people, the communities where the perpetrators come from? Where is the awareness better than it was previously? And the council works closely with schools and colleges through its safeguarding partnership to promote awareness of the risks of exploitation. Talking nonsense. I think he thinks. He doesn't know. There's no data. There's no evidence. He thinks. This is the man who thought the SEND provision was okay until Ofsted said it had systematic failure. Systematically failed. I think we are better at preventing it because we do an awful lot more now as a partnership in promoting awareness in schools and through our youth work activity and community information and through the media. What? There is much greater awareness, and awareness provides protection. So he's agreeing with us. Awareness provides protection. So all this time he was saying barefaced lies, him and his council, and now they acknowledge that awareness provides protection. So where was the awareness before I released that dossier of emails that I've since been persecuted for? Where was the awareness then? We're much more sensitive to identifying the early signs of exploitation. Well, what are the early signs of exploitation? And stepping in early to address and resolve those issues. Well, quantify it. Give us the data. Give us the data. Prevention applies at all levels, so that if we can reduce harm or further abuse of children from coming back into that system, then that's part of the package of work with them, which is not just to deal with offences against them, but to help them to be protected in the future. Again, gobbledygook nonsense. I'd go further. It's not just about lived experience, Alian. I don't need to have lived experience. They don't care. Use the word empathy and lack of concern. They don't care, or they care more for something else. They more care about the political ideology, which is this, what I call the fake liberal metropolitan elite, is the term I use. Or they care more about promoting themselves and their careers. What happens to people who speak out? In my experience, they're not rewarded. They're demonized, they're ostracized, and their careers are over. So Maggie Oliver has a say. She's enraged. And they're giving her. Since May 2021, GMPs have been under new leadership. What's that got to do with anything? How many people have been charged or convicted of Operation Sherwood? 0. Across the region, the force has invested more than £2.3 million into its new CSE unit. Why has that new CSE unit been created? I'd say as a consequence of the campaigning of the likes of Maggie Oliver. Greater Manchester Police spokesperson, unnamed, said, "We have an excellent joint approach with Oldham Children's Social Care. So excellent that the Chief Constable was forced to apologise and the leader of Oldham Council was forced to apologise less than 12 months ago for how horrifically they had failed children in this town." And they pick up an anecdote, not data. A recent example of this was a case where the team identified a number of victims, and the male was convicted of 6 offences and received 4 years, 10 months, and signed as sex offenders registered for life. Did this take place? Come on, quantify it. Pad it out. They won't do. And then there's this thing about sexual offences becoming decriminalised. And it goes on about, I don't really think it's necessary to do with children. But then she jumps back to Mr. Jones. Protection for children is in a different place. Well, what was the place it was in before? I'd say Mr. Gerard Jones. And what place is it now? And what's different about it? What do you do differently? And what are the different outcomes? Mr. Jones said interventions locally also take place in the justice system through family courts to protect children who are assessed at being in circumstances where they are at risk of harm. We do litigate those cases actively if we don't think children are safe. He's just talking. nonsense again. Yeah. It would be wrong for us to completely rely on criminal outcomes to help protect children. And we do what we need to do and work with families and with our community to achieve that. So what are your other outcomes? Not outputs, outcomes. There are other things we do to reduce that risk, but it doesn't say what the other things are. Apparently, it's greater investment in social workers. And that GMP was having a positive impact. Oh, this is what they're saying. They're funding keeping our girls safe, remember? And I've mocked them because I think it's they've been set up to fail and they don't know it yet. But the local authorities invested £150,000 over 3 years with the charity Keep Our Girls Safe. £150,000 over 3 years. They gave $1 million to Flat Cap Frank for his grass in a one-off payment, but £150,000 over 3 years. If you averaged out, it's £50,000 a year. Yeah. Some overheads, office space, all of that. Pen, paper, insurances. They've lost £10,000 of that 50,000. So they're left with 40,000. 40,000 is the equivalent of one worker and some part-time admin. If that, and not a very good worker in terms of pay scale. So where's the outputs from keeping our girls safe? Where's the outcomes? Come on, 3 years. Where's your outputs and outcomes? Activities, outputs, outcomes. Where is it? Nowhere. We keep saying we're in a different place now than we were then, which is actually true. How is it actually true? And if you keep saying we're in a different place now than we were then, why do you never say what place you were in then? Or when then was? Our awareness is much greater now and we're much clearer on the risks. Yeah. We've got a team and we've increased the number of our social workers in that so we can be even clearer and invest even more time. He's talking nonsense. We've got specialist nurses and a number of police officers who are dedicated. What does that mean, dedicated? Outcomes. How many have you arrested? Come on, how many of the 522 children who were sexually abused last year that you have confirmed in this report, how many of those 522 children have had arrests made on their behalf of what was done to them? How many of those 522 children? And then how many arrests were made in total? Come on. And apparently because of positive response from GMP and following the new leadership in GMP, no. The new leadership in GMP had nothing to do with it. It was to do with what we forced out of the mayor. First in Manchester, where they admitted 97 sexual offenders were allowed to carry on. And the minutes of the meeting where that decision was made have been lost by both the police and the council. Absurd. And what we forced in Oldham, it had nothing to do with a change in leadership. It was to do with what campaigners exposed. It was to do with a community that refused to be silenced no matter how they were demonized. And I would argue was to do with how many of them we took out at the ballot box. And then they would jump on the government spokesman and so on and so on. Ignore that. I hope you found that analysis of value. If you're finding value in this transmission, please like, please share. I will carry on. I've got much more to do and I've spent over an hour already. I'm just going to go and get myself a drink. If you find value in the transmissions, please like, please share. And also for the 201 of you, wow. Also for the 201 of you who are watching, please consider buying me a coffee. There's a link at the top. I would, this is how I earn my money. This is my work. I put it out for free, and I'm hoping that people find value in it and then decide I'm worth £2 on buying me a coffee. And again, because I've gone and looked before I came and did this tonight, no one has provided this analysis. No one has provided this analysis.
Too often, I'll say bare-faced lies. I'll say bare-faced lies. I'll say bare-faced lies. Again, bare-faced lies. Too often, I'll say bare-faced lies. I'll say bare-faced lies. I'll say bare-faced lies. Again.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, bare-faced lies.
Bare-faced lies. Bare-faced lies.
Hey Sean, you got a party, got that little party going on there. Keep to the left, you can't think right, so everything you do goes wrong, yeah. Incompetence just leads to disaster. Corruption brings it on even faster. What you say?
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, bare-faced lies.
Bare-faced lies. Bare-faced lies.
Comrades, you always told us you'd build us all a new Jerusalem, yeah. You talk the talk, but when you walk, you only leave a crooked line there. And you don't see the trouble that's brewing if all you do is just what you're doing.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, bare-faced lies.
Is this where you wanna be? Debt and childhood poverty. Want somebody set us free from this corrupt kleptocracy? Oh yeah.
Bare-faced lies.
That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes so easy to disguise, you get shooting cold, overgrown, postal phone, bare-faced. That's right, yeah, we got an agenda. And it's your money we're gonna spend, yeah. Do you want where it's all gonna end, yeah? Do you feel me, we never wanna defend, yeah? 'Cause when the truth becomes
A song from our past that doesn't age, I think. It doesn't age. So, the analysis I've just provided you with is the reason why Oldham Council is attempting to take an injunction out against me, or threatening to take an injunction against our government. They've hired a law firm called Browne Jacobson, who are refusing to give me a named contact. I've got everything that I will share with you, but I think I'm going to share it for a bespoke, standalone presentation, transmission. So I'll do that another time. What I'll do now is carry on with what the response were from the others. You've seen what I've just done. What, an hour and a half it took me to do with you? Clearly I've spent far more than an hour and a half going through it line by line. This was the statement from Maggie Oliver. I would say the voice that should be heard in all of this article is that the only victim survivor who was actually heard by the review team in Oldham, Sam, also known as Sophie. Wow, Maggie Oliver straight away is attacking Gerard Jones. That's what that is. This was only because I knew Sam personally, so when Oldham Council told the review team that under capitals, no circumstances must they speak to Sam, as she had made it clear she wasn't prepared to be interviewed, I was able to intervene. In fact, they were even told she was at risk of suicide if approached. All lies, to be honest. The person who is responsible for that is not at Oldham Council. I know Maggie's done it as a tag, but there is a named individual, a specific individual as identified by Andy Burnham in that report, and that man's name is Gerard Jones. I told the review team that was not true. In fact, it was a lie. Gerard Jones is the person responsible. Lied. There you go. Lie. Maggie Oliver is saying the man is a liar. I'm not having to say it. Maggie Oliver is saying it. The Director of Children's Services, according to Maggie Oliver, is a liar, who attempted to prevent, and probably did also prevent other survivors from giving testimony. It's also confirmed in the assurance review. And yet here he is in the role he is. Every other victim was silenced. Again, Maggie Oliver. Every other victim was silenced. And the community in Oldham are angry and feel their public servants in Greater Manchester Police and Oldham Council have tried to gag them. That's Maggie Oliver. That isn't, what is it, John Hughes? Maggie Hurley? I'm too aggressive? I go too far? Is Maggie Oliver being too aggressive or going too far? Hence, when I hear these words from the new leaders, see, inverted comma, leaders of Oldham Council, you'll forgive my scepticism as to the veracity of their words, their motives, and my lack of trust in their intentions. And you all remember Child A, Denise, just before the review was released. We timed that on purpose. It's still up there, despite them trying to take it down. So that's Maggie Oliver, straight out there, you know. The Oldham Conservatives came out and said this: if this is not a case, if this is not a crisis in Oldham, then what is it? Quite frankly, the Director of Children's Services and Leader of Council should be incredibly concerned, given it has now been firmly established that 522 children in 2022 were abused in Oldham. The Director of Children's Services, of course, is Gerard Jones. Not only that, is it astonishing that given the severity of all this, there is still a denial about grooming gangs. As you can see, he wanted to shift the narrative away from grooming gangs, and the Oldham Conservatives have picked that up from the article. The Director, I think they missed us either, but we'll forgive him. The Director of Children's Services is in denial. So Gerard Jones is in denial. That's Oldham Conservatives. The fact a national task force has been established should indicate the deep rootedness of grooming gangs. The fact decades on, prosecutions are so few and far between is shameful. Not a single public official has been found guilty of any wrongdoing. I would say Gerard Jones should be interviewed by the police. I honestly think Gerard Jones should be interviewed by the police. I think that's what they're saying. Is that not what the Oldham Conservatives are saying? And Maggie Oliver saying? Maggie Oliver's called him a liar. Who tried to block an investigation. Maggie Oliver's called him a liar. And the Oldham Conservatives are doubling down. Which begs the question, if reporting has found so many in 2022, how many fell through the net prior to improved and more accurate reporting prior to 2014 to 2022? Again, that, despite attempts to silence us, we shall not relent from demanding a public inquiry into this matter. Justice delayed is justice denied, and that's Lewis, Quigg, Dave Arnott and Christine. That's who that is. And I'm with them. I stand by them. I support them. I'm with them. The Royton North Conservatives, I'm with them. That's who this is. It's Lewis and his team. Immediately straight out. That's courage. That's conviction. 522 children have been confirmed to have been sexually abused in children. There's a recognition that the real numbers are higher. That's just in 1 year. I would say you could fill up an entire secondary school with the number of children who were sexually abused in Oldham in 2022 off what's been released. And not a word from Arood Shah, the leader of your council. Not a word from James Ignatius or Rook McMahon, your MP. Not a word from Debbie Abrahams, your MP. Do our children not matter? I would say no. To these people, our children do not matter. And that is why I am standing for MP, and that is why I will take him out. Because I believe when we take our message to the communities of this town, they will agree with me that our children do matter. They matter more than anything else. I'll get onto that in a second. So, of course, nothing from the Lib Dems. I've seen nothing from the Lib Dems. In fact, the Lib Dems released something which was what's it called? Helen Bishop wanting us all the councillors to get in line and go and hide behind this internal council steering group. The Failsworth Independents wouldn't turn up to the protest, the vigil on Saturday. Apparently it's political. Well, you're a bloody political party, you dimwits. Of course this is political. This requires a political solution. You didn't turn up because you've been probably chased down the street, Brian Hoban, Lucia Ray, Hindle. Because of what you've done, Mark Wilkinson turned up. He's not a council anymore, but he turned up. I was pleased to see him. Mark Ince turned up. He spoke. Spoke really, really well. Maggie Hurley and what's he called? John Hughes turned up. Glared at me. I'm quite happy to glare right back. Which brings me on to what they issued. I think it came 48 hours later. A press release from the Royton Independents. Let me find it. So I'm fair. Let me find it so I'm fair. Bear with me. Let's see if I can find them on here. They have me blocked on the... No, and just so you can see it, here's my screen. I'm going to have to try and find it a different way, but give me a second. You can see this is the Writing Independence. They've blocked me. They've done what Oldham Council did. There you go. So I've typed in Writing Independence and you can see nothing comes up. My last... When I congratulated the Writing Independence on the 5th of June, the content isn't available at the moment. The reason the content is available is because Maggie Hurley and John Hughes have blocked me. I think Mark Haynes spoke very, very well. I'll get to that. Give me 1 second. Let me try and connect something else up and see if I can get it to work. This is the statement. Hopefully it'll work when I turn this on. Bugger. No. But it's on their webpage. You'll see it on their webpage. On the Facebook page. What they've done. And let's see who's brave enough. Who's brave enough to come forward. What they've done is they've issued a statement. They were forced to issue a statement. And that statement, they've just copied and pasted the newspaper article. 522 young people, children, our town's children, have been confirmed to have been sexually abused. And this is how serious the Writing Independence took it. They copied and pasted the newspaper article. Plagiarized it and finished it off with one sentence, and I'll read you the sentence, and it's not even a sentence. Honestly, go and have a look. They've just copied and pasted the MEN article. Labour-run Oldham Council is failing our children who keep voting down a public inquiry that is not acceptable. Do the honourable thing and stop putting your careers before the safety of our children. Nothing less than a public inquiry will do. Who on earth wrote that sentence? If my 8-year-old daughter wrote a sentence like that, I'd be embarrassed. Because by the time well, I know she is. She's taught what a full stop is. Nah. Yeah, you'll see it. No, you can see it. It's on the webpage. Let me tell you what else has gone on. Now, I'm not sure what I'm going to do about it because there's Tony Martin here. He's here. I respect Tony Martin. Consider him a friend. Consider, and all of you I know I consider to be friends. The independent group had a meeting last week, and I pieced this together from primary and secondary sources, like I do. And again, what you believe is entirely up to you. And I'll share with you where I'm at. Markins is doing well. We agree, yeah? He's done 2 things so far in the council chamber, and 1 thing specifically, and I know he's done another thing in the parish council. He's done a couple of things in the parish council. 1 I can't share yet. He needs to share it because it's amazing. What he's done is amazing. But the first thing he did in the council chamber was after we failed to get the Writing Independence essentially on board for a vote of no confidence. And it's the last time I spoke with Maggie. Well, one of her reasons why she wouldn't support a vote of no confidence in the public inquiry was she said, what's the point? We'll lose the motion. It just showed her political inexperience or ineptitude or cowardice. I'll let you decide what you can ask her. We'll lose every motion. We don't go into the council chamber to argue for motions, thinking we're going to win them. It's to raise awareness of the issues. But put that to one side. It's fine. Done. Fine. That's fine. That I wasn't bothered about, per se. Mark Ince goes in, and his first thing is to amend the Conservative Party motion. Brilliant. And you'll see how brilliant it is come the election time, and how we win seats off the consequence of what he's done. He changed the Muslim cemetery motion, where the Conservatives wanted the council to hand over a plot of land to a private group to build a Muslim-only cemetery. Mark said no. Because he is. He's a socialist type. He's a lefty. He is. I don't mean that as a criticism. It's what I, in the main, consider myself to be. We take all of our people together. We don't leave anyone behind. It's that sort of mentality. We serve everyone. And his position was clear, and it's brilliant. Yeah, and I keep saying it because it is brilliant, and you'll see how we win seats as a consequence of it. He changed the Conservative motion and said, no, there should be a Muslim section in every council-run cemetery in the town, across the borough. Why should, and there's a historical Bangladeshi community in Shaw, why should a Muslim who dies in Shaw have to go and be buried in Chadderton, miles away from the community that they consider their own? So every council cemetery should have a Muslim section. Forget giving them their own and they're separate. That breeds division or privatising it. They should have their own section in all the council-run cemeteries. And Arood Shah, the Muslim Arood Shah, Shahid Mushtaq, the Muslim, Abdul Jabbar, the Muslim, Mohan Ali, the Muslim, Nazrul Islam, the Muslim, Shoaib Akhtar, Fida Hussein, Nail Ibrahim, all of them voted against supporting Muslims from being buried in the local cemeteries, having a Muslim section to be buried in the local cemeteries. And we will use that to carve inroads into traditional block voting, Labour block voting Muslim communities. Watch, it was brilliant. So that's the first thing he did in the first meeting. And you could see he was nervous, but he did it. And the meeting earlier had been chaotic. Theresa, I think, had spoken up about her son. And in the last council meeting last week, the newly elected Councillor Hinz forced Arood Shah to apologise, the leader of the council. It's the first time I've ever seen Arood Shah apologise. Forced Arood Shah to take responsibility and apologise. And that means if the SEND provision continues to fail, then it's on Arood Shah and she'll have to resign. Because she took responsibility and she apologised. Now, she tried to twist it, but that's what she did. Brilliant. Now, he leads the independent group. That's the 3 councillors, because the other 2 wanted him to lead it. He didn't self-appoint himself, I don't think. I doubt it. The 3 of them would have met and said, okay, we're going to sit together. Well, following that meeting, there was a desire, clearly not just following that meeting, following my analysis of that meeting, I should say. Following my analysis of that meeting. The Royton Independents wanted an urgent meeting. Not to applaud him or see how they can support him. They wanted an urgent meeting. And I've not got this from Mark, by the way, before someone goes off and wants to shout. I've got my own sources and I've got multiple sources. I asked Mark, who went to that meeting that they had, and he said, Roger, can't say. I give him my word, I can't say. So I'm like, fine. If you're giving me a word you can't say, Mark, that's fine. At that meeting, and a series of actions had taken place before that, at that meeting, to all extents and purposes, the Royce and Independents, and when I say the Royce and Independents, I'm very specific, Maggie Hurley and John Hughes, attempted I call it a coup. I don't think there's any other word. And what they attempted to do was get the other independents on board to have me sidelined. Have me ignored. Cut me off. Now, up to that point, key individuals, many of you here, or some of you here, had been contacted or approached to test the ground to see whether you would support removing your support of me and using those networks you have to remove. Roger Mir is too aggressive. Roger Mir is this. Roger Mir is that. And what were the exact words? What has Roger Mir ever done? And I'll tell you what I've done. So there's no ambiguity, Mr. John Hughes, Mrs. Maggie Hurley. I'll tell you what I've done. I've not done enough. I wish I had come to this earlier. I wish I had done more. And for that, I beg forgiveness from every child, every young person who has suffered because I was not here early enough, quick enough, strong enough. Now, if you want me out of the way, just tell me and I'll leave. But step up. Do you think I enjoy putting my daughter to bed and wondering if the police are going to hammer down the door in the morning while she's here? Do you think I enjoy that? Do you think I enjoy stopping my car when I'm coming home to let cars past? Because I know I'm being followed? Do you think I enjoy knowing that my house is at risk because someone wants to take me to court or someone else wants to take me to court? Do you think I enjoy listening to the harrowing testimonies of some of these young people? So yes, they attempted a coup. And at that meeting, was Mark Hughes, Mark Wilkinson, Sandra, I think Mark Hintz's team were there as well. Lee and Lisa, I would imagine. Sorry, I've not pinned that. I've not put all the pieces together yet and I've not gone and looked. And they should have met. It's right they should have met. And it's right they should get the house in order in terms of the operational structure of what they do and how they meet and how they work together more effectively as a team. All that should happen. I've been advocating for it. I spoke with Mark Wilkinson some time ago. I said, Mark, when you're back on your feet and you're ready to go, will you go and knock some sense into them? But instead of agenda item being 1, being all of that, agenda item 1 was me. So you want to talk about me without inviting me to a meeting. And thankfully, Councillor Mark Hints and the Shaw and Crompton independents were very clear. They have a relationship with me. I've supported them. They continue to support me. Likewise, Mark Wilkinson and his team said the same. What has Raja Mir ever done? I think it would be very easy for me to get angry and very easy for me to say, and I did say to my friends, I'm going to finish him. It'd be very easy for me to do that. It'd be very easy for me to take it personally and absolutely destroy the right and independence. But then I look at people like Graham and Jeanette, who I get on with. I've got no issue with them. Last time I saw Jeanette, she brought me a sandwich, I think. Last time I saw Graham, I had a pint with him. Well, he had a pint with me whilst I had a Coke. And then I look at all of the people in Royton who put their faith in these people. And I look at what went wrong in Failsworth and how hard it will be for Mark and his team to rebuild that trust, because people don't want us bickering and people don't want us falling out. They see us as a viable alternative. And I can get... And I am emotional. You know, I'm an emotional guy. You've seen it. I speak from inside here. I know the reason why I think so many of you are engaged in this and have been in this journey, because I hope you engage with someone who's sincere, who's not making this up. I'm not making this up. I'm not presenting a persona of a person I'm not. I care about my town. I care about children. I've been keeping our country safe from terrorists. Our way of life, because I know what the other way of life looks like. So it'd be easy for me to destroy him. But as Mark Wilkinson, Mark Hints, Tony Martin, and a few others have said, where will that take us? So no, I'm not going to destroy them. I'm going to let the others around them, because that's what would happen to me in that setting. People around me would have me see sense and reason with me. And I surround myself with good people. and I'll leave it there. I'm not saving helping keep Lewis in power. I'm not supporting Mark Wilkinson. I'm not supporting Mark Ince in Shaw or in Crompton. My ask of the right and independence had been a simple one. Fundamentally, it had been a simple one. One, it was once you get into council chamber supporters, they don't want to, fine. Two, recognise the sacrifices that I and the others had made. Not once have they named us or supported us. You've seen that yourselves. And the third one, and perhaps I'm being selfish here, and I'm sorry for being selfish. I'd hoped that the councillors, the people I'd helped get elected, would then support me. For 1,000 people have supported the right and independence, and there's 1,000 votes in right and south. 2,000 votes in right and south for me. They went and knocked on the doors with me and said, look, Raj Amir helped us get over the line and we'd like you to support Raj Amir in the general election. I know Mark Ince will do that, even though he's in Shaw. Might ask him to go into Chadderton North or something with me. I know Mark Wilkinson, Calf and their team. David Gidman's here. They're going to Hollingwood or Chadderton South. Warren Bates, I saw him yesterday. Yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday at the event. Because I know that we will not get what we want until we remove McMahon from power. I know that, you know that. We've got Arud Shah to retreat to Glodick. Arud Shah's retreated to Glodick. There's the beginnings of civil war within the Labour group because of who she is and her links. Jim McMahon, he can say what he wants, but we all know he's been sacked, removed. And Debbie Abrahams is trying to keep her distance. Angela Rayner wants nothing to do with either of them. And come the next general election, she won't be an Oldham MP in any way. We've got the majority down to 2. And there's 12 Labour Party councillors up for re-election in May. And I'd like to focus on them. And if Maggie and her team, John and his team, however that team operates, want to get on board, they'll get on board. If not, it's fine, they can do what they want. If they want to work with Mark and Sandra and the Felser flop, maybe they will. Maybe they won't. Who knows? If they want to damage the relationship, go and ask the Conservatives. Go and ask the Conservatives who facilitated go and ask them why there was not a Conservative candidate in Royton South at the last local elections. What the right and independents will do now is play it on safe issues that does not in any way challenge Arud Shah and the Labour Party. You'll see. You've got to understand, I've been here before. Not as in here. This isn't new to me. This is what I do. This is what I've done for a long time. So no, I'll leave them to it. I'm hoping they get behind Mark Ince and allow him to lead. Because he is leading. I, of course, help him. I help anyone who asks for my help. But this isn't me. This is him leading. He's done two amazing things in the council chamber. He's got the leader of the council to apologise. And he's demonstrated that the Labour Party are not for the Muslims. That's what I'm trying to say to you. He's demonstrated the Labour Party are not for the Muslims. Because they wouldn't support the burial of Muslims in other graveyards across the town. At the next council meeting, he's got the leader of the Liberal Democrats, who he's ousted one of them to get into power, took over the parish council, and he's got Howard Sykes to second a motion. Going to the full council meeting in November, wanting a blanket ban of the HMOs, for 6 bedrooms and less in Shaw and Crompton. And Arud Shah and their mates will be forced to vote on that. And because of all of that, if you followed what's gone on this last week, because of all of that, Irish Imi has been sent on the attack. He's called this decent man, a councillor, a vile racist pig, online. And he's identified his wife, Mark Ince's wife. Now, what's a convicted heroin dealer doing that for? I'll tell you why. I think he's doing that for is because he's seen whoever is his gateway to whatever he wants, Arud Shah, being humiliated and attacked, and the Labour Party machinery that they support being dismantled by a new councillor who's working in partnership with others for the betterment of the entire borough. I heard that as well, Gary. He's been sending messages to your mother, hasn't he? Why is Irish Imi sending messages to his mother, to Gary Tarbuck's mother? That's what these people are. Not nice, not kind, she says. Well, she should look in the mirror, shouldn't she? She should look in the mirror. Thank you to the 240 of you who've watched this evening, who've joined me for this evening. I've not got through everything I wanted to. I'll try and come back later on in the week if I can. I was hoping I could have a meal with some of you, so I'm thinking I was a bit too optimistic when I saw some of you at the protest on Saturday, and I was thinking Wednesday. I'm thinking the following Wednesday to give you some time. All we'd do is just rock up at the Bougtef, but I'm hoping the following Wednesday, not this Wednesday, to those of you who I mentioned Wednesday, I'm hoping the following Wednesday, if we are free, then we'll just rock up, and it'd be good to see some faces. It'd be good to see some faces, and I love seeing some faces, seeing so many of you who turned up to the rally, to the vigil. My friend Billy from Page UK ran it. It had absolutely nothing to do with me other than Billy asking me to attend. And of course, Billy asked me to attend, and I attended. It was as simple as that. I saw some of the other speakers. I want nothing to do with some of the other speakers, but this isn't about me. This is about something bigger than me, you, or any of us involved in this. This is about the future of our town, and it's about the safety of our children. I've maintained from the beginning, we do not have the luxury of choice. So who am I? Who am I to start developing an ego? Thank you very, very much. My name is Raja Mia. This was a Recusant 9 transmission.
Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them. On the 20th of November 2003, James Ignatius O'Rourke McMahon was elected councillor for the Failsworth East Ward of Oldham. Deeply ambitious, he ruthlessly rose to power, and by 2011, he was already leader of the council. In 2015, exploiting a Labour Party loophole, he became MP for Oldham West and Royton. If only the people of the town knew then what they now know. Do not fear them. Do not fear any of them.